you know, we tend in our minds, we have the habit of, if we're painting representationally, that it needs to be legible or depictive, and as opposed to we're painting out of just our experience, and the image is a tracing of that experience. And it's not that we don't want to end up with a painting, an image that holds formally, you know, that has a formal strength. We do, because then there's more power in the image, in the object, to deliver the experience. But having something have formal power is different than the image being legible in some normative, depictive, as if objective sense. That's a different deal. That's not the same thing. And we know that because there's so many images that, you know, where they're so powerful and they're not legible as, oh, this is this thing. And then the act of painting becomes an arena for being with the space, being with what is.
Don't you find that in the act of looking, I mean, really, 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 really looking, that everything not only comes together, but it also kind of breaks apart in some really unexplainable kind of a way. And it just comes together in these like new ways and new patterns. And it's like the miracle of seeing, I think, of really responding and really seeing and painting. And
is this Jill?
It is. Yeah.
Hi, Jill.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, seeing is an activity. It's a movement. It's flux.
It's flux. Yeah.
You know, Cézanne showed us that, in case we hadn't been paying attention. And yeah.
Jordan, it's Leslie.
Hey, Leslie.
Maybe I should already know this, but I just like to hear you talk about it. You talk. Say you want to pursue this kind of painting. I am interested in this engagement experience of seeing what you're doing, but you do eventually. You want to move into what you call formal power. What are the key things, you know, to bring the formal power to a painting like this, without necessarily just starting to put in objects and, you know,
well,
a conventional painting?
I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think that necessarily does give it formal power. Putting in the objects in a legible way, it has more to do with first of all the relationship to the four sides of the rectangle, the compositional structure, how my eye moves through this rectangle to the four sides and back through the rectangle. I think it has to do with the spread or composition of attention, so that it's not just like two-dimensional design problem of getting the image to work well within the rectangle, but the kind of attention that is being brought to bear throughout the rectangle. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs the same amount of attention. No, it doesn't mean that it needs the same amount of marking throughout, or the same kind of marking. So, you know, some areas can be more spare, let's say, and some areas can be more densely woven or something. But the amount of attention paid to the spare area, that is, I see, oh, I'm seeing it, I'm attending to it, even if I'm marking there less. And so there's a quality to the attention to the whole thing that ends up creating the wholeness, because that's the tendency of it. Awareness is whole. So when I bring my awareness to the image, it will organically, naturally locate where there's been less attention, and it will move me there. And it's like, oh, is that feels like there's a disjunction there. Let's say it's more spare, and yet the transition to the place where there's more dense painting might be too jarring, and maybe I need to attend to that transition or something. So you know, as we learn to paint and we develop our skills, so there's all kinds of things that we need to learn to be attentive with, or of, however that's, you say that. You know, you need to be able to be attentive to the tone and the color and the mark and the edge and the line and the structure and the rectangle and all the transitions and the edges. And so there's a whole list of formal things to be aware of, to bring to our awareness and become familiar with and integrate into our way of working. So then there's an ongoing integrated familiarity with all the formal elements. As we work, we can stay more simply aware as we're working of the situation. And that awareness organically will, it seems to me, bring the image to a formal strength and wholeness and power in the particular flavor of our being, of our temperament. There's something else in here that I'm not sure exactly, the thought came and slipped out of my head, but had something to do with attending to the space and bringing awareness to, or painting knowingly, bringing awareness to our activity of painting. That painting the space in a way becomes a kind of metaphor or formal means of simply painting more knowingly, with more awareness of the situation.
Thank you. It's a lot to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you for the question, because I mean, truthfully, I'm not sure, what to, how to go about talking about any of this. So.
Yeah, well, if I could sort of make a piece of it concrete, one thing I noticed you do is you'll be exploring space, and once in a while you'll make a very strong decisive mark out to the edge, which connects it all with the rectangle. And having studied Cezanne with you, I get that. And but my question earlier would have been, how do you choose the space, the place where you're going to make that connection? Okay.
And that was what I was referring to when if I show up, that is, I'm bringing my attention up, and my awareness of all these formal aspects, including the structure of the rectangle and the four sides, and I've worked to become more and more aware of that as I paint over time, over years. The impulse to make that mark to the side is not self-conscious. It arrives. It lets itself be known. It mentions itself to me as if. So it's more like I'm following. So it's not so deliberate. Sometimes when if I'm sitting and I'm kind of letting myself be receptive to the painting, it's like, oh, it wants this, maybe, And then I'm aware of that as I go. Now I step up to paint, and so there can be a lag time. And then it takes a little bit of letting go. It's like, oh, I've got an idea in my head that came in of what to do here. I'm going to do that. But that's what I mean by the awareness ends up organically bringing the image to wholeness, because the awareness is whole. And for those of us that live aesthetically or visually, those experiences come out of the awareness into that expression. And so as we pay attention there, it will go naturally into wholeness if we just stay with it and stay sensitive. But that's hard. I mean, it's hard to stay with it. It's a practice, in a sense, not to move into confusion or doubt or impatience or frustration, or to move into those things and then let them subside, let them recede. Not to solidify them or clench. And so it becomes a kind of a rhythm there. So that's, I mean, for me, that's a lot of how I experience painting as a practice.